the Committee of the Whole regarding bill numbers 130-489, 130-724, 140-140, 140-144, 140-145, 140-146, 140-147, 140-148, and Resolution 140-159. I would ask Ms. Lewis to please read the titles of the bill and the resolution.
Bill number 130489, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-2500 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Real Estate Non-Utilization Tax by changing certain tax rates, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 130724, amending Chapter 19-1300 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Real Estate Taxes by authorizing the School Reform Commission to determine whether certain tax exemptions from School District of Philadelphia real estate taxes shall continue, and by making technical corrections, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 140140, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1500 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Wage and Net Profits Tax by decreasing the rate or rates of the tax imposed upon certain low-income persons, providing for refunds of excess taxes paid, directing the Revenue Department to develop procedures and forms whereby eligible taxpayers can obtain such refunds, and requiring employers to provide refund forms to employees, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 140144, an ordinance to adopt the capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2015 through 2020 inclusive. Bill number 140145, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2015 capital budget. Bill number 140146, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2015. Bill number 140147, an ordinance amending Section 19-1806 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Authorization of Realty Use and Occupancy Tax to further authorize the Board of Education of the School District of Philadelphia to impose a tax on the use or occupancy of real estate within the School District of Philadelphia under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 140148, an ordinance amending Section 19-1801 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Authorization of Tax to further authorize the Board of Education of the School District of Philadelphia to impose a tax on real estate within the City of Philadelphia under certain terms and conditions. And Resolution number 140159, providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2015 through 2019 and incorporating proposed changes with respect to fiscal years 2014, which is to be submitted by the mayors to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, the authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement, authorized by an ordinance of this council, approved by the mayor on January 3rd, 1992, Bill number 1563-A, by and between the city and the authority.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. And now you can take a breath. Our first department today is the Managing Director's Office. Mr. Negrin, could you come forward? And please identify yourself and proceed.
My name is Richard Negrin. I'm the Managing Director for the City of Philadelphia. With me today is Dave Wilson, First Deputy Managing Director. We are joined behind me, as you can see, by the majority of our team in the Managing Director's office. Good morning, Councilman Greenlee, other members of Council. The fiscal year general fund allocation budget reflects an overall increase of $1.3 million attributable to the legal services contract and some modest salary increases for CLIP. The total proposed budget for the Office of the Managing Director is $81 million, with roughly $5 million derived from grants and revenue fund and $76 million derived from the general fund. Throughout fiscal year 14, the MDO has continued to foster an environment of continuous improvement, and we strive toward reaching the mayor's strategic objectives and his goals, while also responding to and addressing the needs of our citizens. Over the past year, the Office of the Managing Director has focused on and continued work on several key initiatives. Philly 311, for example, continues its direct outreach in neighborhoods while continuously working to update its technology and relaying service requests to our departments. For resolution, I am proud to say that this year, 311 has reached its 6 millionth call here in Philadelphia. And besides providing excellent service on a daily basis, it has also become the go-to number during times of crisis, going to 24 hours, working hard, whether it's a storm or a hurricane or an earthquake, to be there to answer the questions for our citizens. Philly Rising has expanded this year with 4 additional neighborhoods to reach 19 neighborhoods in need of assistance throughout the city. And I want to personally thank most members of City Council who have been just huge partners for us. We can't do what we do in these neighborhoods without working together with these stakeholders to make a huge difference around quality of life issues. I want to introduce, for the first time publicly in a formal setting, the new director of Philly Rising, Ade Fuqua. Could you stand up, Ade?
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
The Office of Special Events has coordinated city services for hundreds of events, including Welcome America, Made in America, and the Broad Street Run. Just this past weekend, Race for the Cure and the Dadville Regatta went off without a hitch, really showing that Philadelphia is a place where great things happen, and that we are a showcase city, comparable of any major city in the United States of America. The new Center of Excellence, with its director, Jackie Linton, who's here as well, is developing capabilities of city workers through training, tools, processes, and internal consulting services. Just yesterday, we kicked off our leadership development series in partnership with Drexel University, and Jackie, in partnership with Al DiTilio, who is here, has taken that class through their initial segment around leadership development. It is developing the capacity within our employees in the areas of project management, organizational development, and performance management. We continue to make great progress in that area, and that's a new effort, which Jackie will be happy to give you some detail on. I'm sure there'll be some questions. Finally, as you know, the Office of the Managing Director provides important leadership to our key infrastructure operating departments in an effort to better provide government services to both our internal customers and our external citizens. We are grateful for the many partnerships that we have in this room, and we look forward to answering all your questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Negrin. I think many of us, particularly the council president, has been interested for a while on the whole municipal advertising issue. Could you give an update on the RFPs for that and where we stand and how quickly we're going to get it done?
Yeah, I can. This is a big week for municipal advertising. So Thursday, we expect to get the proposals that are due on municipal advertising. There's been a great deal of interest, over 12 at this point. There might be more. Do you have the total number of folks? 12. So 12, all the major players that you would expect from the industry are engaged and involved. So we expect to have very detailed, comprehensive proposals that will bear some fruit. We'll have at that point, once we receive those proposals on Thursday, roughly 30 days or so to render an award. We can extend that, which I anticipate we will in this case, just because of the nature of the complexity of the decisions we're going to make around municipal advertising. For example, I'm looking forward to working with, as you know, City Council is an important part of our working committee around municipal advertising. And the council president's office literally sits right next to me in those meetings. Mm-hmm. One of the things we're going to have to determine as we see the quality of the proposals that come in on Thursday is whether we set up, and I think we should, some form of a public comment process around giving the neighborhoods and people that will be affected by potential municipal advertising an opportunity to speak up and help frame and form the decisions we make around those issues. So to the extent that there's any anxiety around the potential to advertise on libraries, the potential to advertise on rec centers, the potential to advertise on public vehicles and public buildings, we want to make sure that we're addressing those concerns, we're listening to the public, and working together. I think City Council may be a forum that we can use to do some of that and capture some of that, whether we hold some public meetings or whether we hold public testimony here to help collect information on what the public cares about. So that's the timeline. We expect and hope that as we work through that process, that we'll have some municipal advertising up and running by the end of the year.
Okay.
So, and you know, the revenue question is the one I get on a regular basis. We know how much SEPTA has made and
Right.
what they expect to make on their plans, which is in the hundreds of over $100 million. If we're in the millions of dollars, we're incredibly satisfied with starting relatively small, building this up, and I think trying to maximize eventually as much revenue as we can for the city of Philadelphia.
Well, obviously, raising revenue is a big piece of this.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's something we've all been interested in, and certainly I think I could say we certainly want public involvement, and we want the public to be as comfortable as possible. The council president said many times that, you know, we're talking about tasteful advertising, that kind of thing. But I guess on the other hand, we want to add, we want to try to get it done. We have been a little frustrated. We think this has taken longer than it needed to be. We can disagree on that, but you know, obviously, the quicker we can get this going and get that revenue in, obviously, the better. Thank you on that. Just have one other question. On the Office of Special Events, you mentioned in your written testimony it has broadened its mission. Can you detail that a little bit more for us?
Well, I think the office is doing a couple of new things that we're doing more bigger events than we've ever done before. So one of the things that it's been doing is really enhancing its role. I don't know that it's a new role. I just think it's a bigger, more complex role. And with the leadership of Giselle Jones and Michelle and Robert Allen, there's an, and I want to add, Giselle couldn't be here today because she's literally touring the city with a cardinal who is here
that's important.
on the World Heritage issue, hoping to further our efforts around bringing the Pope to Philadelphia. And that's a great example, right? That's
Absolutely.
If we do something like that, we've done it before as a city a long time ago. We believe we can do it again. I think Giselle and her team are breaking ground on the scope of the size of those things, working in partnership with the City Representative's Office and Desiree Peterkin-Bell. One of the things that Giselle and I have been talking about over the last several weeks, and we were designated a next city on behalf of Microsoft, and we're having conversations with Microsoft around different partnerships around enhancing and modernizing city government. One of the things that Giselle and I have been talking about over the last few weeks is we're about to get a new permitting system for our special events that's going to be online, and Microsoft is looking to provide that actually pro bono for the city of Philadelphia. It's stuff that they've used in other cities. They see all the things that we're doing here, and they're looking to be a partner with us on those issues. Giselle's very excited about that. That's going to be new. That's going to be a new initiative that we hope to wrap up. It's already done. It's a turnkey approach, so it shouldn't take more than a few months to get that system up and running. That'll help folks get permits, all the way from those block parties all the way up to major events, to be able to permit faster and more efficiently for with the city of Philadelphia.
And I just want to add, as you know, I live near where a lot of those special events are, so
We've had that conversation.
Constituents come to us, and I really think your office has handled that very well. There's some people who just never want anything there, and obviously they're kind of in the wrong place for that. But we have tried to, I think the interaction has been very good. I think every year it improves, and the dealings with the neighborhood improves, and I think the community appreciates that too.
No,
So,
thank you. I
thank you.
appreciate it. Well, that's a balance.
Sure.
When you and I have had the conversation, people have to have the common sense not to use a loud sound system when they're
Right.
doing yoga on a Sunday morning. So long as we have reasonable
Right.
rules and people behave appropriately, I think there's a good balance we can strike.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councilman Good?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Negrin.
Good morning.
My line of questioning is centered around trying to figure out how $200,000 becomes 15% of $53 million. So my first question is, what was the total amount of contracting done by your department in the last fiscal year?
Sure. One moment.
It's on page 3 of your testimony.
Fiscal year 13 is $1.3 million.
Councilman, in fiscal year 13, is that what you're asking? Total contract amount was $53 million. The net amount for contracts was $1.3 million. The total MBWDBE total was $201,975.
Okay, we'll walk through that slowly. What was the total amount for fiscal year 13?
The total contract amount,
Total amount of contracting done by your department in fiscal year 13?
$53,885,000.
And how much of that went to disadvantaged businesses?
$201,000.
And what percentage of total contract dollars is that?
I don't have the total contract of dollars here. What I have is the total percentage of what was the net contract amount and what was spent on minority purchasing.
So the percentage of total contract dollars is less than 1%.
If, I have not doing the math, but that might, if you have that number, that's,
Less than
we're
1%.
looking at it from a point of what the net contract amount is.
Why are you looking at it that way?
That's the guidance that we've been given, and that's the kind of methodology that's been established
By who?
by the Office of Economic Opportunity.
So OEO told you to exclude 95% of the contracts.
OEO, my understanding is that this percentage is based on what dollars are available in their determination of what dollars are available to be contracted with minority enterprises.
Okay, that's not their right to do. My question is, did OEO tell you to exclude 95% of the contracts?
No.
Or did you request to exclude those contracts?
No, there was no request or no one was told to exclude any amount in the contract.
Okay. So what contracts were excluded?
I don't have that information. I can get that for you, though.
So over $50 million in contracts were excluded, but you don't know what those contracts were?
Well, I do, okay, the contracts were the Defender's contract.
Yeah.
The
big one.
the Conflict Council, which is the Defender's contract would be the major contract here. The Animal Control contract, those were,
So they don't buy anything?
those are service contracts that we have with those entities.
So they don't buy anything?
I'm assuming they do buy things,
Then
Councilman.
why is there no opportunity for participation?
Because those are contracts that we have with those entities. We don't control the spend that they have outside of that.
Of course you do. You have a contract, you put it in their contract.
I'm sorry, say
You
again?
have a contract, so you just put that in their contract.
They're service contracts, Councilman.
It doesn't make a difference. You can't just exclude $50 million worth of contracts. I mean, you're here to testify on your budget and what you pay for goods and services. You give $50 million to people to provide goods and services. There should be goals for what they spend. There's a reason why there should be goals for what they spend, particularly since that's the law.
Understand your position.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great.
Thank you for all of those wonderful accolades about Ms. Jones. Now I know why I don't get dinner at night. But moving off of that, a couple of things. One, I don't know I would like you to speak to the FTI consulting report, in my opinion, put out a lot of good, cost-effective suggestions by way of government and what it could do to be more efficient, more cost-effective. To what degree has your leadership and through the various departments incorporated that into your operations plan?
So I'll speak about that broadly, and then I'll pass it to Dave, who's working on coordinating some of our responses to the FTI report. And actually, many of the recommendations that they've made, I'd say more than half at this point, have been accepted and implemented. Dave can give you some detail around those. But one of the things we did is when we received the report, it's almost over a year now, almost over a year now, is I brought my leadership team together, including all the commissioners and the operating departments, and had a conversation around what we could do to specifically implement those throughout the MDO. And they've been doing that. So both the departments themselves, under Dave's direct leadership, has been going through those recommendations, and where they're applicable and where we can adopt them quickly, we have been doing that. And he'll give you some detail around that. The rest, I think, is, as you look at this budget, for example, is a good example. There's a modest increase in our budget really based on the legal services contract and some modest salary increases for CLIP, which quite frankly were some of the folks that were the lowest paid folks in the city and needed to be remedied in terms of the dollars. So you look at our budget, it is we are doing more with less. We're not asking for a significant budget increase around the programs, despite the fact that something like Philly Rising, for example, is growing, despite the fact that we're doing major projects around Center of Excellence. I've pulled the Center of Excellence, those resources for that organization, out of former positions that were in the managing director's office and redirected that spending to create project management capability, to create organizational development around the Center of Excellence. So there are efficiencies there, I think, that were not even in they go beyond what the FTI report did in terms of how we do what we do. And I want to talk about the Center of Excellence a little bit because I think it's new, and as a result, I think we need to explain what it is. In the past, when I came on, it's been 4.5 years now as managing director for me. When I first started to have conversations with people, members of city council, members of the administration, one of the biggest complaints that I heard was that we didn't manage projects as efficiently as we could with just a high quality at a centralized way. So if you look across the city today, we often enter into outside consulting contracts for planning, for strategic planning, for project management. And I saw that as a real gap and something that we should be doing as a city government. So the Center of Excellence was created under the leadership of Jackie Linton to do just that, to be kind of the internal consulting arm for city government in a way where we didn't have to go outside. So now several hundred employees have been trained around project management with identifying consistent systems and a method around that. Really led by Ed Garcia, who's in the room, who has Six Sigma training. So the city of Philadelphia now has available through the managing director's office and the Center of Excellence the ability to utilize the expertise where we are training the trainer, not managing people's projects specifically, but creating the capacity both with software and technology and through training to do some of that project management themselves. So if you can imagine, if you're training 150 people around project management, in a way that was never there before. That's going to make not only the government do all of that faster, more efficient, but hopefully at a much higher quality than we have in the past. Those are the kind of efficiencies we've been working on over the last year.
So is Dave going to elaborate on my question of the FTI report?
Sure.
And at the end of the day, can you quantify those suggestions and how they translate into savings for the city of Philadelphia and provide that to the chair and members of council?
Sure. Thank you, Councilman. I think in the MDO, I think there are 3 or 4 specific areas that the FTI report or departments that the FTI report addressed. And if I could, I would let OIT speak to some of their projects as they're
I've
up
got
next.
something for them.
Okay, all right. But I think in the procurement department, one of the items that, or one of the areas that we looked at and have made some changes to are in the manner in which we procure. And I think that was one of the big pieces. And I see Rebecca's coming up and probably wants to jump in on this, but looking at reverse auctioning, we ran 2 pilots on 2 items here. FTI, kind of recommended that we look at a way to get more vendors involved. And so doing a reverse auction was one of the pieces. Looking at our terms and conditions, we just had a draft T's and C's or terms and conditions report done. We should be having something to go final. What we're looking at here is that the amount that vendors have to pay for bonds and things to that extent get looked at and addressed. On the fleet side, you mentioned it earlier on in your testimony with fleet, on the whole issue of hedging fuel. That was a big recommendation. So we've moved ahead with that, not only on looking at hedging with fuel, but partnering with MOTU and with Rebecca's help and everything like that, looking at the whole energy, how we hedge energy in general. So public property, we've looked at processes there around the change orders. And so we're in the early stages of this whole piece. I don't know how much we're going to be able to quantify. I can ask Rebecca to kind of speak to that, but those are the areas we're addressing right now.
Just Rebecca Reinhardt, Budget Director. I'll just add to that. Dave just gave a very good overview about the departments under the Managing Director's office purview. Overall, the FTI report came out right before we introduced the fiscal 14 budget last year, and they had estimated that we could save about over $80 million over the 5-year period, and we took about 62 or $63 million of that savings in the 5-year plan, and we're tracking that. Overall, we're on target for that. There's some areas where we've come in higher, and some areas where we haven't been able to realize that level of savings for various different reasons. But as Dave said, we have a steering committee that meets once a month, and we go through where we are on all of the recommendations, what's been implemented, what the challenges are on some of the ones that haven't been. And some of the recommendations don't have direct dollars associated with them in terms of savings, but businesses, for example, the things about terms and conditions and all the different requirements to bid. FTI found that businesses often don't want to bid for our business. For about 50% of all competitive bids, there's only 2 or fewer responses. And that really needs to change. And that's one of the reasons we've been going through and making changes, even when it doesn't result in quantifiable dollar savings.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just recognized that that $80 million could go a long way, even if we received half of that. So I found the FTI report to be helpful in formulating and understanding your departments. I used it, quite frankly, as a cheat sheet. It kind of highlighted where we could do better. Closing on this round, I would only say that in general, your departments have been very responsive during major snowstorms, through floods, through all kinds of building collapses. I would say that, it's not what you do on your best day, it's how you perform on your worst days that I found them to be strategic partners with my constituents, and that's how I found them to be. I'll hold my questions for the next round, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you for that.
Councilwoman Bass?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. I just wanted to start also by echoing Councilman Jones's last statement that we have had great response from the different agencies in terms of service and reaching out, particularly in emergencies and when things are happening and things, happen all of a sudden. We're usually able to get a call and get service and response within 24 hours, 48 at the very latest. And so I did want to thank you for that. So I start off, being nice. But I also wanted to go back a little bit to Councilman Good and his line of questioning in terms of the amount spent in minority participation. And, I really had to say that I found the numbers to be very intentionally misleading. If you don't, if you kind of just glance over them, it looks like, everything is fine. Well, not exactly, but it looks like you're doing something. But when you dig down into the numbers, the participation just isn't there. And I don't think that we can use the excuse of, well, we sub it out or it's somebody else's responsibility. I think as a city of Philadelphia, we're ultimately responsible. The buck stops with us. And so for us not to ensure that there's participation and to suggest that it's somebody else's fault, somebody else told me to do it, somebody else told me not to do it, I just think that is completely unacceptable. So I just wanted to say that. I don't know if you want to respond or...
Yeah, look, I'm happy to say something about this. I mean, first of all, as the highest-ranking Latino in city government, participation,
Say again, I'm sorry.
as the highest-ranking Latino in city government, participation for our community is something that's incredibly important to me. How our OEO department determines to count our contracts is something that I have influence over, but it's not my decision. The numbers on the participation with regard to my office specifically are driven by a contract that we administer but don't specifically manage. So when you look at the Defenders Association, which drives the bulk of those dollars, there's nobody else in the city of Philadelphia that does what the Defenders Association does.
Right.
Right? So that's a challenge.
Hold on a second, Mr. Negrin. Councilman Goodwood, a point of information?
Question was, for the animal control contract, for Defenders Association contract, do they buy anything? If they buy stuff, then you
They
can set
do.
a goal.
Yeah, I think the answer to that question is yes, they buy things.
Then you set a goal.
We're happy to look into those things. And Councilman, you've been a leader on this issue. I'm happy to work with you outside of just this day.
Particularly
about
if you
this.
know you're going to continue to do those contracts,
Yeah.
it's very easy to set a goal
Yeah,
because you're doing the same contract year in and year out.
Yep.
You find out exactly what they're going to buy, and you set a goal.
yeah.
And you put it in the contract, period.
And I think those are good ideas, and those are things that I am willing to look into and willing to do. Animal control is another great example. There's nobody else that does what animal control does in that context.
Yeah,
So-
I hear what you're saying, but I
Yeah.
think, it's a little, to me, it's disappointing
Yeah.
because we didn't just get here yesterday.
Yep.
I've been here for, a little over 2 years, and you've been here quite longer, and, so this isn't new. And so the idea that we're going to now sit down and try to figure it out, how do we get, minority participation, and how do we get, more women participating?
Yep.
As if it's a new question, I just find it to be completely unacceptable.
Yeah, and I agree with you.
And I hear what you're saying, as a male of Hispanic descent, and the gentleman next to you is African American, and,
Yep.
for this to not have had some sort of conversation, just to me personally, I find it a little troubling. When I'm out and I'm in the neighborhoods and I see, that businesses, particularly minority businesses, are really struggling to survive in Philadelphia, and that we haven't afforded an opportunity or made sure that an opportunity was afforded, it's a problem.
Understood.
Okay. So a couple other things I just wanted to ask you about. Philly Rising, so we just started Germantown Philly Rising.
Yeah.
So can we get an update on that in terms of, how things are going and what the deliverables will be, and
Come on.
Hello, I'm Ade Fuqua, Councilwoman Bass, and yes, I would like to answer that question about
Good morning.
Germantown. We just opened up Southwest Germantown a few weeks ago, and I believe you were at that meeting. Jim Sanders, who is one of our senior coordinators, has been, and has actually been promoted to deputy director, will be overseeing the operations in Germantown, in Southwest Germantown. We held a meeting in our office about a month ago where we had about 20 people from Southwest Germantown show up, representatives that all represent different parts of the community. We were very pleased because this is a part of our 2.0 model, which we just started as a new initiative. And in Philly Rising 2.0, we look for established communities that have a little bit more centralized services already working so that we can jump in and help them to get to the next level and keep them from falling into what we would call an official Philly Rising neighborhood. Right now, Jimmy has been working with several of those stakeholders in that area to do a lot of the things that he talked about in his focus group meeting. And then he has a meeting coming up next week, which he will be talking about some of the specifics of the details that they discussed in that meeting.
Okay, very good. And, well, I'm glad that there was significant participation that you all were happy with, and that, is that about the average participation? You said about 20 people showed up? Is that normally the way?
No, ma'am. Usually when we do the general meetings, when we were first going into communities, now for his general meeting, he had more than 50 people.
Oh, yeah,
there.
I was there.
So we see, and that was just for 2.0 neighborhoods. For some of the neighborhoods where we're having some more challenges, where there are tougher issues when it comes to violent crime and quality of life, we're averaging about 100 people coming out to those meetings, and that's not counting city employees. That's just local community people that want to make a difference in their community.
Okay, very good, very good. And another question for the managing director, actually. So I had a question on 311, and specifically, did I run out of time?
You did, but I'll...
sorry.
Go ahead. You can ask. I was going to ask 311 questions, so yours might be
Oh,
better.
okay.
Go
All right,
ahead.
it might be the same question. So 311, are there any specific requests that should not go to 311 beyond emergency calls?
The short answer is no. I mean,
No?
I think we
Okay.
want to make 311 as inclusive as possible, even in areas where the right party is outside of city government, whether it's questions with regard to the federal government or questions with regard to federal programs. 311 is still a good number to call because the agents in 311 are well trained under the knowledge base to help direct those calls to the right place. So I think as we have the public conversation around how do we provide the most valuable to our citizens, the most value, we want to push the 311 number outside of that emergency context, as you stated. The big difference, I think it's hard enough to communicate what the right numbers are to call
Okay.
for people out there. So we really are focusing on 911 for emergencies, 311 for almost everything else.
Okay.
If it's an inappropriate call for a city agency, we will direct them to the right call and often transfer them ourselves so that we can make that connection and they don't have to call two numbers.
I'm glad to hear you say that, and the reason I asked is because just recently our office got a number of phone calls about 311 where they were basically, according to the callers, told to call elsewhere.
Yeah.
And actually one of them was one of our staff who was calling 311 for some assistance on a particular matter while they were out in the district. And, we're told to call somewhere else. But I'll be happy to talk to you offline about what the specifics of them are because they can be a little bit detailed. But I just wanted to double check that all non-emergency calls should be going to 311 and all emergency calls should be going to 911.
Absolutely right.
Okay, all right, great, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. If I could just follow up on the 311 issue with one question. I know in your written material here, you track the amount of service and information requests. Is there also a tracking done of the actual completion of the complaint?
Yeah.
And I know you use the word close a lot, and sometimes that gets a little bit misunderstood, so
There can be some confusion with the terminology, and I'll ask Cheryl Johnson to step up from 311 to help address the question in more detail. There can be some confusion around whether it's closed for 311 or closed for the department, whether it's founded or unfounded.
Right.
Part of what Cheryl is doing, which we can speak to a little bit around our current practices, but we're having a conversation right now with departments like L&I, like Streets, around that very issue, because as we roll out the new CRM, the Citizen Management Program that we're putting out is one of our big capital technology projects that we're in the middle of. We hope to resolve all of those issues around whether something is open, closed, what does that mean, is it closed? Because I think people need to understand that closed means resolved. And when you say closed, it means that the problem was fixed, not that 311 just communicated the information and a department is kind of engaged in the process. So we're having that conversation right now as we update our technology to make sure that any confusion around those issues is resolved. But I'll let Cheryl speak to some of that.
Okay. If you could identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Johnson. Good morning, council members. So 311 is responsible. We take in the information and we forward it over to the departments, and then the departments are actually responsible for the delivery. So we do track that information, but we, in terms of our scope, don't have oversight and enforcement of the departments. Piggybacking on what the managing director said in terms of the terminology, we are well aware, because we hear firsthand from the constituents about the confusion over the terminology, and we do have regular meetings, particularly with our large volume customers, in terms of that terminology. And as he mentioned, as we move into our new CRM, we are working to make sure that that terminology is not just understood internally, but understood globally, that if we say close equals resolved, we'll be using, the departments will use the terminology that is most understood by the public.
Okay. And you're right. We hear that a lot, I think, in our offices. People say close and, the traffic light's still not working or the house is still falling down, whatever the case may be. But I guess the broader question is there any tracking system that says when that street light was called in, we know now it's working? Is there any tracking of that?
Okay, so we do have a tracking that the departments will indicate to us when an issue from their perspective is closed, whether that means investigated, resolved, whatever their particular status is. So the short answer is yes, there is a tracking. Where there could be some confusion is what that actually means.
I guess, Councilman Heenan, I know, has been waiting, but I guess what I'm trying to get at, is there a way we can say, there's been such and such amount of requests, and such amount of the problem fixed, whatever terminology you want to use. But,
Yes, the
you
answer
know.
to that is yes.
Okay. Do we have that information, or, I mean, is that provided here somewhere, or can it be
It is
provided?
not, but we can follow up and provide
If you
with that
could, yeah,
information.
because I think in the end, that's what really people are interested in, getting the problem solved, you know?
Absolutely.
And I think that's been the whole problem with this closed thing, because I think people see that as meaning the problem was solved, and it really doesn't. It means you forwarded it to the department, right? Is that what closed?
No, closed does
No?
not mean that. So 311, in terms of a service request, we don't actually close out the issues. The service delivery department is actually going in and putting in the status. But we track that information, but 311 is not the one going in, closing out those cases.
Okay, all right. Then I'm still not clear what closed means, but I won't, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe I can explain it. It's within the system itself, the power of the department to render it closed, not 311, but within the same system.
But what does it mean, I guess, Rich?
The
is what I'm
issue, that's the question, right? So what we're trying to do with the new system is clarify so that there's no ambiguity on meaning,
Yeah.
because that means different things to different departments. So there are some departments that may go out to that location, and because of a wrong address that was entered, they might render it unfounded. And if it's unfounded, they might call it closed. When it wasn't founded, a problem was there and it was resolved. And that's where I think there's some ambiguity. So we're working, and so to answer your question really succinctly, yes, we can show you that system. You can see how it's entered, how it goes to the department, and whether it's rendered closed by the department at some point, resolved, depending on the circumstances. Often that ambiguity is addressed in the comment section. There's some places to do actual comments during the actual system itself. But the truth is, we need to make sure we're all speaking the same language across city government. So closed means it was resolved.
Right, that's,
Is the point, and we're heading in that direction.
okay, all right, thank you. Councilman Heenan, sorry, took a little time there. Councilman Heenan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Won't be apologizing to me to try to get answers for the city of Philadelphia. So, good morning,
Good morning.
Managing Director,
Good morning.
and everybody else. So, well, you know what, I'm going to follow up on 311 since we're talking about it. And look, I think 311, the purpose of it and what we're trying to accomplish is where we need to go, in a direction, especially with technology. I mean, I do have some concerns, with 311. So 2012, we were sworn in, and one of the first things in my first month, after receiving a tremendous, as a district council person, receiving a tremendous amount of constituents calls, what do we do with, the phone call? So we refer it to, now we also refer to 311, make sure, and we tell everybody to call 311 in addition, but what is the follow-up? So when somebody calls my office, or stops in my district office, and, has an issue or a problem, and it's the biggest problem or issue that they're having or they're experiencing in their life at the time, because they feel that it's important enough to call their elected official or stop by either City Hall or their district office. So they're either frustrated or, they feel that it's a threatening, for, public safety and harm in any capacity. So we sat down and figured, what happens? We get a phone call. Yeah, well, I called it. And I said, well, that's not good enough. It's not good enough for me, in the office that I run. I mean, that is not good enough. So when, if we're missing, and I'm glad to hear you say that, you're trying to, correct things or tweak things, make them better as we discover them along the way. But having unfounded and having no answers for the unfounded response really kind of puts, I think, it would put me in an awkward position, because, I have a responsibility to my constituents that I serve, that I'm elected to serve. So if there's any way to get a little more involved in, some of the data sets that you have. I don't want to get into the programming or the processes, but, some sort of coordination, with what, in a pragmatic way, what works and what doesn't work with my office is what what I'm going to throw out there. I would love to help make it better and help make it successful. All right, because I do receive, several calls, a lot of calls that say, well, they're saying it's unfounded, or it's open, or, whatever else, or, and then somebody will say, well, you had the wrong address, or it's not exactly there. It's just so there's an opportunity for, and I'm segueing into the Center of Excellence. All right, there's an opportunity for Center of Excellence to be really excellent. All right, in the collaboration with 311 and all the other departments who are having it. And I think this is, if this is going to be a long-term success, which I think it can be.
Yep.
I think it will be, and I think Center of Excellence needs to be a part of it in 311. Are they engaging in 311?
They are.
Great.
Councilman, I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, I think we should all be incredibly proud of what 311 has accomplished. We've done this together as an organization, the administration and city council. One of the things that I do, and you mentioned the word, which I think was a really good point on your part, and that'll only be enhanced by the new CRM, is your ability to get data and your ability to understand what's going on with your constituents. One of the things that I get to do is before I go out to, whether it's a Philly Rising meeting or a meeting with a member of city council, is I pull the 311 data for that area before I go, so that I understand what some of the calls are and some of the concerns and kind of what's going on in that neighborhood. You all have the ability to do that. We provide that on a regular basis. There's monthly, there's quarterly reports on that. If you're doing those things as needed, feel free to reach out to us for data, and we can better collaborate around those things. I think it's something that we need to work on. The big story about 311, and I want to make sure that I say this because I think it's critical, and we lose sight because it's been around now for 5 or 6 years, is we're on the same system right now that we were when 311 started. So think about that. That was a program that was really almost at a pilot level when we started, and that the software and technology there was supposed to last roughly 6 months to a year, and we're 5 years in. And so we've reached 6 million faster than any other larger city. We're handling crisis after crisis and using 311 as a valuable tool. This year and the CRM, which is on track, there's a pilot that starts in 2 weeks that's been in planning for well over 2 years. In partnership with Salesforce, in partnership with Unisys. This year is the transformative year for 311. So I think this is a timely conversation, and that your interest right now in what we're talking about is really critical because by the end of the year, we will have finished that pilot around the new system and where we're going and what we're doing. And that pilot system, and I can have Rosetta, if you want more details, Rosetta Liu, who's our project manager on that issue, talk about what that's going to deliver for you. But I think you're right. In terms of the follow-up, I think that's a lot of just us working closer together and being able to, when we get calls directly from your office, be able to follow up directly and make sure that folks understand what happened. Sometimes that follow-up is not us. Sometimes it needs to be the department. So figuring out how to get that communication happening where 311 is done with it, but a department has executed and they need to get back to you and let you know about that. I think we should talk about how we can best create that channel of communication because I think there's an opportunity to maybe utilize technology to do some of that as well.
And I think and I'll be quick and yield my time to the next. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. In what you're doing, in whether it's a Center of Excellence or better processes on collaboration with the other departments. I mean, Philly Stat's involved in reporting that. So it is that kind of quality control and standards. People are doing great work now. People are doing real good work. sometimes, we forget that infrastructure isn't just pipes and buildings and bricks and mortar, that it's technology, and that we need to, we have these processes and systems, to be more efficient and communicative with each other. So I think just, collaborating a little more with the other departments, it's just, we've grown so much over the 5 years, and I think we can take it to the next level. And it sounds like you're on your way. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you. Councilman Jones, I know you've been patiently waiting back there. Councilman Jones.
Thank you. Some of the questions that we ask are consistent with other departments that come under your purview. So I've asked, particularly in light of the fact that we are trying to better fund our schools, but also, as importantly, get better outcomes. And one of the outcomes that we would like to, and I've mentioned in prior budget hearings, is they talk about the pipeline to prison. I'd like to do the pipeline to a paycheck. And in light of the fact that many of your departments have talked about the inability to attract skilled laborers, whether it's the water department, whether it's the streets department, how do we create that public school to paycheck pipeline? So there are some examples of it. At the Randolph School, they have the fire academy there, where fire department personnel actually train the young people to take the test. And they've been successful. I think there's a stat like 95% of the kids pass the test. They don't all get hired because of sometimes veteran preferences, but many have managed to get hired. The streets department has done a piece for at-risk people, ex-offenders even, to do street kind of work that may well lead to those kinds of activities. The fleet department just did 2 young people, one of whom is accepted in college, and one won a national competition on automotive stuff. That went to both of them went to Randolph. What I'd like to do...
I sent those 2 young men to your office.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I did.
So I'd like to see, almost in the model of a CETA program, created to work with schools like Randolph, Saul, Dobbins, Overbrook, and in particular for the case of Overbrook with the police department, to expand the Explorers program to go beyond just being at the police academy, so that at-risk individuals can get to a training place as opposed to have to travel clear across the city to do so.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is challenge you, because they all report to you, to coordinate an effort and call it, whatever you want. I like pipeline to paycheck personally, but I don't have a right of authorship to that, but call it whatever you and the administration want to. But the objective needs to be to have a percentage of young people that actually are prepared to take a civil service test, prepared to take a physical test, whether it's the police department or fire department, because many of what I'm hearing about those recruitment efforts, that many of them flunk out the first day because they weren't ready to take the physical test. Now, if nothing else, most kids can pass gym. So how would you orchestrate something like that within your department?
Yeah, I think there's really 2 issues, and I am wholly supportive of the pipeline and feedership programs. I was proud of those 2 young men in Fleet who engaged in a statewide competition and won. And to meet those kids, to bring them to meet the mayor, to send them up to your office, I think is what government should be about, providing opportunities to our young people who are hungry for opportunity when there's an opportunity gap. So I'm happy to talk to the administration about partnering with you around an issue around formalizing a pipeline program. Right now, we're doing it kind of department by department, right, kind of in our silos, and we haven't done it sort of as a branded citywide program, which I think is very interesting and something that I would support. So I'm open to those conversations. I think that's great. The other issue, which I want to make sure is on your radar screen, roughly 500,000 of our people in the city of Philadelphia, 500,000 out of 1.5, do not have workplace literacy. When we talk about jobs, when we talk about opportunity, because of the problems with our school system for so long, we're talking about a huge portion of our population, a third of our population, that struggles with literacy issues when they walk into an office building. So, you know, that's a huge issue. It's why the city, we worked together to open 3 literacy centers this year. We need a lot more than that. 3 is just the beginning. That's the other issue. So while we're talking about education and young people, which is really critical, we can't forget those folks who are just over that age, who are also struggling to make themselves work ready, you know, which is a giant issue. I'm going to ask you to, when Adele Abid sits here in an hour or so, to ask him about a great program called Year Up. Adele and I traveled to Boston, met with the founder of Year Up. They're in 13 cities, helping thousands and thousands of first-year students. In Philadelphia, we've done a really decent job getting a much bigger number of kids to graduate high school. And shockingly, in that first year of college, we lose many of those kids. And some don't matriculate. So there's a significant number. I was shocked by the number. It was something like 25%. I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, where they got into college, they're figuring out a way to try to pay for it, which is still an ongoing struggle for many of our kids, and they don't make it to that first day of college. I mean, there's nothing sadder than that, I think.
Well, I appreciate that, and I will ask that, but more to my point is that we have an opportunity. Every kid isn't going to Harvard.
Yep, agreed.
Every kid doesn't want to go on to college, but all kids want the dignity of work.
Yeah.
So if we can identify, we could have our own stimulus program within our procurement process, within our departments. There's 3,000 miles of piping under our feet, and those drainage pipes within the water department leak 23% of their water, 23% of their fresh water. And if we train kids from Overbrook or Dobbins or Randolph, today they would retire from those jobs 20 years from now. And so that pipeline to paycheck it's not for the kids that have a ticket already punched to go to college. It is more towards giving young people practical skills that aren't that way.
Yep.
So instead of having a hammer, they pick up a hammer, play on words. So I'm going to ask one last question, and then you've done a pilot program dealing with the real-time training with the Real-Time Crime Center. We saw Councilman Greenlee, myself, Councilman Kenyatta Johnson went down and viewed that. Tell us how that's being incorporated into our ability to improve the quality of life and keep us safe.
I'm going to ask
Now,
Mike Resnick to address
I
it.
won't do a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mike Resnick. Good morning. Director of Public Safety. Councilman, I'm glad you had the opportunity to go down to see the Real-Time Crime Center at the DIVIC. It's pretty impressive. Based upon the work that they do down there, we have access to, and I'm sure the numbers probably greater now than when I previously got briefed on it, but the city owns X number of cameras. They're the ones that the city actually owns. We leverage cameras that are owned by other agencies and entities. We have camera feeds from SEPTA, from down by the airport, from PennDOT. We have a program where businesses and residences who have cameras allow us access, not that we view it, but if something were to happen, we can then go back and identify the location of an event, see who's registered, and take feeds from their cameras. So we have a network of cameras that we're able to view and that we're able to get information from, that we're able to go back into, and as a deterrent factor, I mean, people know that the cameras are up in the streets. I mean, you see that, and we hope that acts as a deterrent. But more importantly, we're able to go back and get useful evidence from those cameras identify individuals and to prosecute individuals to help, reduce crime in the city. So I think that's the value of real-time crime. Also, officers are able to, when radio calls come in, they're monitoring the cameras and they're listening to the radio. They can punch up the location that is broadcast from the radio as to where the incident occurs, and they're able to see in real time what's going on, and they can get on radio and they can direct officers, no, they went down this way, you're looking for a guy with a red shirt, things like that. So they're able to be the eyes and ears and to convey that information in real time when things are happening. So I'm glad that you finally got a chance to go down there and see it, because everybody says, well, Baltimore has this and Baltimore has that. I think what we have and what you've seen shows that, we might have something better than what Baltimore has. I'm glad.
We don't have Baltimore envy anymore.
Nor should we.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Bass?
Thank you. Just a quick question about CLIP. And so when CLIP cleans a lot, it assesses a lien against the property for the cost. Is that correct?
Tommy Conway.
Coming the other direction there.
Yeah. He should know not to sit so far away, don't you think?
Was the Public Property Commissioner. Thomas Conway, Deputy Managing Director. Yes, when we write violations to private property owners as well as quasi-government agencies, we do bill them for the cost, and if they don't pay the bill, a lien is placed on the property.
Okay. And so when CLIP cleans a lot, and then there's a lien placed against the property, is the amount of the lien the amount of the cost of the service that the city has provided, or is there an additional penalty that's added to that? And I'm only asking because, we got someone who had received a bill or an assessment against their property for cleaning a lot that they owned. And it was in the, 5-digit number, or something like $20,000. And then he complained, and suddenly it dropped to about half of that. So the question is, do we charge, are we billing them for the amount of the service that was done, or is there an additional amount that was added on so that it was so easily reduced, or how does that all work?
When we do the bill, and there is an administrative cost added onto the bill, but I think you're talking about when they go to the L&I Review Board or the Tax Review Board, a lot of times they will cut the bill down. They'll reduce the cost for the property owner.
So they'll remove the administrative fee?
Well, they could kind of remove a lot of the different costs along the, I don't think there's any set process with regards to that,
Okay.
about how much they can reduce it or not reduce it.
Okay. So if someone complains and they can have the amount reduced, and not that I'm necessarily trying to get it reduced, because I think that, people need to be responsible, and if you have a property, it needs to be maintained and cleaned, and the city, that's not the business that we should be in. So, but I just want to make sure I have an understanding of, what the bill or the lien is comprised of. How did we get to that figure?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Just for the information in committees, just so everyone understands, our next department, once we're through questioning the MDO, is the Office of Information Technology, and then we have a callback with the Public Property Department. Councilman Squilla?
Thank you, Chair. I have a question, too, and basically about CLIP, I guess. When coming in, obviously, under your purview, beside cleaning it a lot, I guess it's anti-graffiti also. When we get a call, and even through 311, I got to say the response for anti-graffiti is pretty good to get down there and get it cleaned up. Is there a service that's provided by the city? Obviously, we want to clean that, but there is not a charge, I guess, for that process, is there?
No, not for graffiti removal. Our thinking has always been that they've been the victim of a crime. So we paint it free of charge or power wash it free of charge on private and public property.
Which I got to say is very well appreciated, and I do want to commend, especially the Anti-Graffiti Network, for everything that's done, at least through my district and through my RCOs that actually call them in, and the response time is great. So it's I know we don't normally give you guys credit for some of the things that are good out there, but that is one thing that is done very well. And also because we believe the faster you get it cleaned up, the less likely these people will come back. They like to really stay in areas that have a lot of graffiti in them. But once the graffiti is cleaned and it seems to be tagged again and again, is there anything that we could do maybe as the city? Is there more funding necessary to get areas that seems to be hard hit, how we could maybe get these guys that are doing the tagging and whether prosecute them or maybe bring them into the system, community service, something that we could do to help with our costs?
Well, we're actually working on, which will help this situation out a little bit, is coming up with Galaxy 3, I believe they are, iPads, for the crews, so when they're out in the field, they'll be able to take the picture of the graffiti, obviously download the address, clean the graffiti up, and then input pertinent information with regards to what was done on a power washed or painted. And then that's going to go into a database. So this way, we're going to have a database full of pictures that, working with OIT, John Tucci, Tim Wisniewski, and I told him I'd give him a shout out, Francisco Galarza, who's over there. They've been working very well, hard on this project. So the modern technology is going to help us. So this way we can provide the police department with pictures and more detailed information. Years ago, when we first started, we had Polaroids of our pictures and all. That's how far back we can go. We're going. But I think the more technology we use, we can give that to the police and let them know there's a very active tagger. Because there are some spots, especially in your district, 10th and Mifflin pops in my head, that are constantly getting graffiti. So we let the police department know, the captain of the district, but they got to catch them in the act. They got to be there at that time. And the vandals are, they're elusive and they don't follow the same safety rules and regulations that we always follow cleaning it up.
Because a lot of taggers use the same tag everywhere they go. So if we could catch them at some of these sites. And now with the safety cam and other features that we have to sort of combine the efforts of the pictures you're taking along with some camera and surveillance, because I know it doesn't seem like a big crime to some people, but the quality of life issues are something that we get a lot of complaints about. So again, we do appreciate your help on that and really the active work that the organization has taken.
I also want to add just briefly, we were recently in Hawthorne together during the Philly Spring cleanup. There are some practical things that just for folks to understand and know in areas where graffiti has just been very rampant, where we can organize some of our service activity around those locations and kind of attack them in a way where we repaint, through our resources. I was there in Hawthorne with Philly Rising. Graffiti all over the main building that had been abandoned for some time. Nobody was going to be paying attention to taking care of the upkeep on that building unless we had done that in a service project working with your office and others. So there's an opportunity, I think, for us to coordinate some of our service activity around those areas that are blighted the most with graffiti, which I think is helpful. I also think there's a willing partner in mural arts for some of those big areas that are eyesores around graffiti. When you talk to Jane Golden, and we work very closely with her in many of our neighborhoods, and I know that she's had a big presence in your area, murals are not defaced with graffiti. Graffiti artists and taggers honor and respect the artist, and many of them are artists themselves or believe they are. So that's another part of the strategy is if we can have a thoughtful and a creative mural strategy as well as a service strategy around some of those things that Tommy's talking. I don't think enforcement alone does it. I think you have to do all those things.
Okay. Thank you. Councilman O.
Much, Mr. Chairman. So let me just ask this question just around the dumping situation. What are some of the strategies or new thoughts that you may have or the folks in your office about dealing with short dumping?
So some of the things that we've done recently in the last few years, we have a chronic site that is causing, where short dumping is occurring, is we not only work with our enforcement partners and some of our neighborhood partners, but one of the things that we've done is we purchased some, Mike Resnick was up here talking about those cameras. The quality of the cameras over the last year has really drastically improved. Some of those cameras are now mobile, where a small percentage of them can actually be moved and relocated to areas where short dumping is occurring. So we've done that in some of those worst sites. So if you have a complaint and you have a particular area that is just being inundated with short dumping, reach out to my office. We're happy to have that conversation and try to see what we can do to set up some mobile cameras. The quality of the cameras, and I've seen the pictures, and Tommy has showed me some of the pictures themselves. You can read the license plates on the cars that are pulling up and dropping off the trash, which quite often is, believe it or not, being done by local businesses who don't want to pay to have some of that stuff removed. And they're you would think a local business shouldn't be contributing to the blight in the neighborhood, but every now and then that happens. And Tommy has been successful, I think, and he's walked those pictures into my office, targeting some of those folks and identifying them.
What is the, I'm aware of this, but I just am kind of interested if something has changed since I last looked. What are the consequences to folks who are doing the short dumping?
Well, Shelley Smith doesn't let me practice law anymore, but I know as a prosecutor, when I was a young assistant district attorney, it's a crime. So it is a misdemeanor in the city of Philadelphia. I believe it's an M3 for you to illegally dump trash in Philadelphia. It's in the crimes code, and it is punishable by some time in jail if you get in front of the wrong judge. So people should take it very seriously.
I understand there is a fine, and I can't remember, is there confiscation involved in this as well?
When we get the license plate of an illegal dumper, we work with the Police Neighborhood Services Unit, who will run the plate, and they'll issue a $300 traffic citation because they're using their vehicle for the illegal dumping. We have worked with the District Attorney's Office, especially Beth Grossman, with regards to taking vehicles and then also prosecuting it in the court system for extremely excessive dumping, but not usually on case, it's a case-by-case basis, and that happens rarely that we really go after the vehicles and jail time.
Do you have any data or any information as to what the effect all of this is having on the short dumping? Is it minimizing the short dumping, or is it just really having no effect at all?
Yeah, I don't think we have trend information on what's happening in terms of the number of citations. I mean, I think we can pull that and take a look at it.
Okay, but if we contact your office and you're able to set up a mobile camera,
Yeah.
How long does that camera stay there?
The cameras that we use are solar powered, which is great and also has its downfalls. But basically, obviously, we need a lot of sunlight, and they're motion sensitive, so they cannot be at a location that has high pedestrian or vehicular traffic. Because what will happen is the camera will constantly go off, and it'll drain the battery, and then we'll have to take it back, recharge it. We haven't had the cameras out for the last, well, actually we put them out probably like a month ago, start doing it again, but due to the winter months, extreme cold, not a lot of sun, they were not being very effective, so we took them in and charged them and cleaned them up and all that, but now they're coming back out. And again, if you have a hot spot, we'll look at it, but again, they work great at dead-end streets where usually a lot of short dumping happens, but not where... They can, if for location, if it's very active and we're catching people, we'll leave the cameras there. There's certain spots that we have cameras at, it seems like all the time. And then other hot spots we'll move them to. And actually the cameras, which we're probably going to use this year, have a voice dinner. We have
that's not for you. Go ahead.
We have there's a voicemail system on there that it can, say your license has been, record it, we're going to send it to the police department for, prosecution. We haven't really used that before, But I think we're going to start using it just to see if that's more of a deterrent as well. But it does work. It really does work at certain locations. They stop dumping. Especially they work at night. A big flash goes off when they're taking, they're dumping. And actually several people, you see them, the flash comes back on, you see them putting the trash back in their car and leaving. So
Yeah,
it works well sometimes.
My concern is they leave that place and go to another place and dump someplace else, so, no,
Yeah.
but that's great information. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Heenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, through this whole process, a lot of times, we get the opportunity to publicly, say, hey, this is what we complain about, but like Councilman Squilla had said, there's a lot of good things that's taken place in our departments, and I want to throw out some kudos, all right, and accolades to some of the things that you do have going on. One is I'm a huge fan of the Mural Arts program at Jane Golden, and I'll talk about how that is. I think that you're talking about tagging and graffiti. The mural arts helps revitalize neighborhoods, and it helps, bring some sense of pride and quality of life back into a neighborhood, especially when it's not being tagged. But my friend Tom Conway and his whole crew at CLIP, whatever we can do from a budget standpoint to make sure that they have the resources to just enforce the quality of life in our neighborhoods. I am, as well as other members, are full. So great job, Director, on him and his team, on what they do. Graffiti. So, and I'm sure a lot of other offices have experiences, but, normally, or typically, in the winter months, graffiti goes down. There's it declines a little bit. But I don't see that in this past year. We had the second coldest winter or snowiest winter in the history of Philadelphia, and we've seen a rise in graffiti. It was unbelievable on why, the uptick in graffiti. So, the crews have done a great job in what they have done. Do you see anything, why there has been such an uptick in the graffiti?
I'm not really sure if there was actually an uptick, but for probably several months, we were unable to power wash properties due to what you mentioned about the extreme cold, the snowy conditions. So the graffiti, instead of being removed within a couple of days, sat there. And as you all well know, that once graffiti sits there, the taggers and the vandals want to put more out there because they see we can't clean it up. So we had, after the winter months, thousands of requests backlogged. So I'm not really sure if it was, an uptick or just that we weren't able to get to it. And even painting over, because the crews get pulled into snow operations and plowing and helping public property. So I'm not sure if it was an uptick or just that we weren't able to clean it, so it just grew and grew and grew.
All right, so yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah,
it's diverted and perception.
Right. Yes. And we have done the backlog. The power washing's been taken care of, which is great news. And if you look back the last couple of years, we had mild winters that weren't that bad, so we were able to work, year-round with that.
How much does the city spend on graffiti removal?
With personnel and the paint and supplies and all that, I'm going to estimate, because it's all in one budget, about $1.2 million.
Right. So last year, I drafted a piece of legislation that streamlined the graffiti removal process. And during the course of the proceedings and the process, arose some issues regarding the removal of dumpsters owned by some of our larger private companies. And my understanding is that the firms, they're supposed to, or they do, or they say they do, and they probably do have their own graffiti removal teams. But sometimes they have a hard time in conversations of finding the graffiti on their own dumpsters, where their dumpsters, where the graffiti is. And it appears that our the cities, your departments, the graffiti abatement teams are much better equipped to handle, such a task, because, I mean, you're doing it on a daily basis, you're out on the streets on a regular basis, your response is quick, it's swift, and it's effective. So my question is, have you ever thought of, from NDO, CLIP, streets, have you ever thought of giving any consideration in entering like a third-party contract with some of these major firms or companies where, we as a city could be compensated for some of the removals? I mean, you're better equipped, it's much more efficient, it's happening in a timely fashion, and it certainly, helps with the quality of life of our neighborhoods in a professional manner.
Yeah, I don't think we've thought of that. I think that's an interesting question. I think, the way Tommy described it, we often see the graffiti removal as a public service, right? Something we provide. I think if you have a chronic, running, ongoing big firm and a big business, whether it's a dumpster or the building itself, who is repeatedly a victim of graffiti and is cleaning it themselves, that there's a great opportunity there, I think, for us to have a conversation around whether we could do that more economically and quicker without them having to privately contract that out and collect some kind of a fee for that. I think that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, it just came up through the proceedings, and it was something,
Yep.
Just wanted to,
Yeah,
to
I'm
throw
happy
out
to
there.
have that conversation.
And I think the same thing, I don't know how you handle PICO or Verizon in some of the public property poles, and maybe something else that, we could consider. I mean, it may be a little, but, we're out there, we're walking by it, we see it. Onerous doesn't have to be on, some of the business owners, if you can work out some sort of arrangements, because third-party arrangements are nothing new, to the city.
Yeah, you could do an MOU.
Right.
Yep.
Right, and, I might add that, all the departments, in the MDO, the crews, they do a fantastic job, all without, under an extended contract that hasn't been settled yet, by the city of Philadelphia. So my kudos go out to them, for their patience and their due diligence, removing the snow, coming, finishing the backlog that has been piled up. So great job to the city workers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you need to beware, because Councilman Heenan will go undercover councilman by department and, pop up on a work site.
I saw him in that jumpsuit.
Yeah,
I thought he looked
so
good.
You gotta watch him. He goes deep undercover. So, one of the things that I'm proud about this body's insistence that the Office of Sustainability actually become a permanent department, as opposed to an executive order. And in that tune and in that spirit, we have huge electric bills. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million just for street lights, and another maybe $20 million dealing with other recreation centers and other departments we have. I was wondering how we are conducting energy audits, moving that forward, and particularly the water department. One of the high costs of producing water is our electric bill, and see how we are moving towards possibly implementing solar power in that regard to cut down on the cost of processing with that.
Introduce yourself.
Good morning, Adam Magalico, the Office of Sustainability.
And on the record, Alex Dews needs a raise. So.
I won't argue with that. Regarding the water department, they're an enterprise fund, so they manage a lot of their internal energy audits and energy efficiency work within that organization. We are involved as the Office of Sustainability, as well as the Mayor's Office of Transportation and Utilities, to kind of help them find projects. One of the biggest projects they've been doing, biogas cogeneration project up at the Northeast Wastewater Treatment Plant. That will reduce the energy use at that facility by about 85% and almost make it net energy positive. In terms of general fund departments, that's work that I manage, again, with the Office of Transportation and Utilities as a strong partner. We've been leveraging the benchmarking results, the energy benchmarking results that we've done on city buildings to try to find those buildings that are in greatest need of retrofits, and then trying to develop projects around those audits, and as a result of kind of the inefficiencies that we see in those buildings.
To what degree have, there was a report that came out maybe a year or so ago that the city of Philadelphia was paying utility bills of once affiliated organizations, once affiliated buildings. And I wanted to know have we made substantial headway in reducing that third-party payment?
I can't speak to specifics on which buildings have kind of come off of those bills. I do know that the facility task force made a list of recommendations, among which one of the largest recommendations was to establish a facility task force that would help build out recommendations on and make decisions on which buildings can and cannot be kind of paid by the city. Because a lot of those are gray areas where they're providing public services but aren't necessarily public entities.
There was a list circulated once, and it was even sent through this floor to see if we recognized any of those. I'd like an update on where we are, from the point we started to where we are now, and what that reduction actually is.
Of course, we can get that for you.
All right, provide that to the chair and members of council. In addition to that, the PECO does a peak utility conservation effort where if we turn down the thermostat during peak hours, that we realize a savings. Do we participate in that? And if so, how much have we saved as a result of that?
We do participate in those programs. There's two separate programs. One is a peak load contribution program, which is through PJM, and another program is demand response program. You may have seen on hot summer days, there's days of peak demand. We kind of roll out banners. Sometimes we send out an email blast asking folks to reduce. We also do a lot of that reduction in the back room and the operational end to generate revenue, actually, through the demand response programs.
And has that netted any savings?
It's netted, actually, revenue through demand response. I don't have the exact number, but I can provide that for you as well.
Could you provide that in addition to the chair and members of council so that we can take a look at that? I got the fastest bell most people could, but that's all right.
Everybody gets 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, we believe that.
Your protest is noted, though.
Yeah, thank you. So but my final question in adherence to Pavlovian bells is that I'd like to see us do that. There is a movement towards facility management that, in fact, has off-site monitoring of utilities for office buildings. Mm-hmm. Are we looking at that as the future to monitoring our energy consumption, possibly with the, what's that new commission, the energy, that President, Energy Authority that Councilman Clark initiated? Is that something we would move to? And what they technically do is they'll be off-site, they can be anywhere in the world, and they're monitoring that consumption and then make recommendations like, hey, you're peaking over here, you need to send a crew to find out why.
Yeah, I am very familiar with those technologies, and we are pursuing those. We have a program right now called the Remote Building Operations Program, where we are starting to kind of remotely automate and control HVAC specifically in a lot of our facilities. Right now, it's been focused as part of the Guaranteed Energy Savings Program in our large downtown buildings. We also have a number of police stations and a couple of health centers that are now into these programs, but there's a lot of IT infrastructure, a lot of complications in those, so we're trying to tighten that up before we expand this to a broader base.
I just don't want my office to be the hot one on the floor, but I can understand with the large cost of operating a government, how that can be a savings in times where we're trying to find $120 million plus for the school district. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Heenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That came up quick. I think, just to expand, well, not to expand, just to make a note, I do recall even the Parks and Recs had some sort of program on energy efficiency and cost savings where they had off-peak and reduced lighting hours, with our recs during off seasons, and they saved a tremendous amount of dollars. So, it's just make a note. Your office, I'm sure it's
Yeah, we're aware of that program.
Working with that, right?
Playing fields. Yeah, the playing field initiative where they've been reducing.
All right. So, and that cost goes, I believe, directly back into, well, maybe not all of it, but a percentage of it goes back into some of the things that this body, and the Parks and Recs need. So it's sort of departmental incentives, right, to try to be cost effective and more energy efficient to try to, bring us into, 2014. Great. So thank you on that. In addition, so I want to talk about lots, cleaning lots real quick. I believe that not just the MDO, but OHCD and Mural Arts clean the lots, clean the vacant lots. So I'm going to ask this just to be provided to the chair, if you could, please. Can we get a breakdown to the chair of the following information? I'd like to know what the average cost of cleaning a lot and how many lots we cleaned during FY14, more than once. I'd also like to know how many of these lots were owned by the city and how many were privately owned. And I would also like to know, if it's possible, the back taxes on the privately owned lots.
We'll get you that information.
Correct. Thank you. In your testimony, you stated that 31% is a compliant rate, 31% compliance when it comes to vacant lots, which I assume that the owners cleaned themselves before the city took action. Do you have an idea of how many of the lots fell into the compliance rate, have been cited more than once, or failure to maintain their parcels?
I don't, but I can get that information from L&I. Yeah.
You can provide that well. I appreciate
Will do.
it. And how many community service offenders take part in the program each year? Because I know you have a robust, good program. Is that a part of your, is that a part of a lot of the community programs that you have? I know not just Philly Rising, but I know CLIP uses them. Can you talk about that real quick? And, does that include, the vacant lot cleanings and, types of services? Because I know last year it was a focal point. I mean, it was a big part of the conversation, and I think we've made a lot of progress in that, because I see them. Now, I wasn't one of them out in a jumpsuit, all right, I'm going to say, undercover, but I do.
Different color jumpsuit.
But I do see, more inclusion in some of our programs that are out there. So,
And I can give you some numbers with regards to FY13. Over 2,100 projects were completed. There was 236 city properties were cleaned, 451 underpasses cleaned, 889 blocks cleaned, and then 458 vacant lots were cleaned by community service offenders.
Okay, great. Could you just provide that to the chair?
Yes.
I can't copy it down so quick. Well, that's great, and it has risen,
Yes.
over the course of the year.
I think more and more.
I think Majority Leader Jones has been talking about that for several years, even before I entered in the council. Lastly, since the bell rang, I do want to give kudos to ACCT, right, and your department. Our office has been working a lot lately with them and have been made, and I think, they've been able to make a lot of strides in a no-kill, being a no-kill city.
Yeah.
So I do want to take this opportunity to applaud them and, dealing with the staff. I mean, the staff is like several other departments are understaffed, and they're doing a lot to do a wonderful job in, the manpower and resources that they have. So can you elaborate a little bit on some of the good things that they're doing? Because, we certainly have had more contact over the last year than we have in the previous two.
I'm going to pass this to Dave, obviously, who oversees animal control. Incredibly important function, I just want to say. Dave and I had a conversation just yesterday. This issue is so important. There was a young 4-year-old that was killed by a pit bull. Mother was horribly injured just a few days ago. So the issue is foremost in our mind. I know it's an important issue for many people in this room, as it is for us. But we've had a recent change in the leadership, and I've asked Dave Wilson really over the last few months to get engaged and work with Sue and others to really handle this issue. So I'm going to let Dave kind of let you know where we're going.
Thanks. Councilman, I'm not going to talk to it. I'm going to have the director of ACT talk to it. I think we'll do a better job.
Smart man.
Nice.
Hi, Susan Cosby, Executive Director of Animal Care Control Team. We've had tremendous success. I really appreciate your kudos and your recognition of our work.
Okay, well, great.
Did you have a specific question?
I don't have any questions. I mean, is there plans within your to grow and to to do? I mean, I'm sure it's just not my office that has had recent contact at a higher level with you. So I mean, is your office? What do you need? All right, how can you grow?
Yeah, we're really proud of our success. We've had a year-over-year since 2009 increase of our live release rate, so that now 65% of the animals are leaving alive that come into our facility. We're handling over 30,000 animals per year. Currently, we share our building with Vector Services, which is a division within the health department, and Dave has been working with the health department in order to have Vector relocated to a different city building to give us more space so that we can do the work that we need and actually save the lives of animals that come into the shelter as the citizens want. So we're really hopeful to be able to expand our services. Our life-saving achievements and our work in the community has been recognized by national organizations that are now actually bringing support to our community. Within the past year, we've won in-kind grant awards of nearly $2 million in support for the city of Philadelphia and for our animal programs. So that's actually, national organizations putting their attention on Philadelphia and giving us extra support that we need.
Right, we could use the, well, as always, the national recognition. Yeah. So if you could just circulate to the chair, your accomplishments.
Absolutely.
Right, I think that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all very much. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work you do. Next office is the Office of Information and Technology. Could I please ask everybody to leave quietly, please? We're way behind schedule. We want to keep moving. Gee, thanks for listening to me. Sir, could I ask, sir, could we move forward, please? Sorry, I want to rush you there, but we are running behind, so I know the Public Property Commissioner's been here for a couple hours. Please. Please identify yourself and proceed.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Adel Ibaid. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer, speaking on behalf of the Office of Innovation of Technology and the IT community at large. Appreciate the opportunity to testify today on the fiscal year 2015 budget. Just to briefly go over our business model established in the 2013 to the 2015 strategic plan. We've adopted the following operating principles, and that we take a cloud-first approach so that we can achieve cost savings, that we buy over build to leverage off-the-shelf available solutions and reduce our implementation cycle times, and that we believe also in greater value can be achieved in purchasing or procuring services as opposed to hardware and software, enabling engagement-based government through civic technology and open data programs, increase the amount of self-service initiatives available on the internet, and nurture an innovation ecosystem throughout the city through open data initiatives and civic innovation. These strategic principles have really enabled the IT community to establish several key initiatives. In calendar year 2013, we've completed a county-wide rollout of the new public safety radio communications system, providing police, fire, prisons, street, PGW, parking authority, and more than a dozen partners access to a state-of-the-art, reliable radio communications. Thousands of county-wide subscribers make use of the system today. We've also increased the number of camera feeds that are available to public safety to almost 1,700 feeds. Completed a citywide email consolidation initiative. Today, the central email system provides email services to more than 24,000 citywide users. We've awarded 8 contracts to modernize key mission-critical systems throughout the city. 5 additional contracts will be awarded during calendar year 2014 as well. Released more than 68 new data sets as part of the open data program. Reduced our technology footprint through server consolidation and increased use of the cloud. And we held several vendor forum summits, events to engage local and regional technology partners. More than 1,000 vendors attended these events to learn about the city's IT strategic goals and projects. And as a result of these events, the city has seen a significant increase in the number of vendors who respond to requests for proposals. We've also created a website called Big Ideas, Small Contracts to allow local small business and tech startup community to compete for projects generally $32,000 or below. This is just a partial list of the accomplishments during the past calendar year, and along the way the IT community has won several key awards for the management and administration of IT, as well as innovation management and open data. Really proud of the team we've assembled and the dedicated staff who work really hard to maintain a stable and secure infrastructure for the city. This concludes my testimony. I have key members of my management team and staff here, so I'd be happy to answer any questions you and the other council members have.
Thank you, sir. Just one or two quick ones. You talk about the cameras, and we talk a lot about cameras here. You talk about 89 to 92% uptime with 95% peak. What causes the cameras when they are down to be down? What is there a specific problem, a host of problems? What would it be?
For the most part, mostly are maintenance related. So once we get alerted that the camera is inoperable, we do some diagnostics on our end, assuming that the feed is okay, assuming all of those things are working, then we dispatch someone from Unified Communications staff to actually go out and troubleshoot the camera, and in some case, maintain it, repair it, and at the end, if none of those things work, then replace it.
Okay, are they oftentimes, is the problem vandalism? Are they vandalized much, or is it more just wear and tear kind of thing?
For the most part, it's wear and tear. It's rare that it's due to vandalism.
It's rare,
rare
you
that
say?
it's due to vandalism.
Okay.
It doesn't mean it doesn't happen, it just,
Right.
it's,
Okay.
for the most part, it's wear and tear.
Wear and tear, yeah. Just one other question. The phone directory on the phil.gov, I hear that it's not exactly up to date. There's people that are long gone that are on there, and then people who have been here a couple years are on there. How often is that updated, or is that a problem, or?
I think the phone directory has outlived its usefulness, clearly. There's a manual process for updating it that we're not as happy with. And we got saddled with it, and I think we're doing the best we can. I think we favor perhaps a better approach of, now that the city is on an entire single email system, I think there's an opportunity to use what's called Active Directory as the source for that phone directory for the city, and really kind of sort of sunset the old list.
You mean not use phones at all? Is that what you're saying? Or?
No, I'm saying sunset that list and replace it for something that is updated more frequently.
Oh, okay, all right, I got you. Okay. All right, thank you. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I left off a question before with you guys earlier on. What is our wow factor, I think my quote was. And I will refine that. I don't need a wow, but I do need a plan. What is articulate our, in common folk, low-tech terms, what is our plan? And where physically, do you have that plan with you today?
Yes, the plan was forwarded to, as part of the entire package, but I certainly have a copy I could leave with you.
Could you provide a copy to the chair?
Sure.
How many pages is that? Approximately.
20 or less?
Okay.
Yep.
So could you articulate what the plan for technology for the city of Philadelphia is?
Sure. So the plan pivots around 5 key strategic goals. First goal is to ensure that the city operates a stable and secure infrastructure, technology infrastructure. This is the technology infrastructure that every agency uses, every department uses. So it's in our best interest that we make sure that that technology infrastructure is as stable and as secure as possible. So that's number 1. Number 2, modernize the city business applications so that we can bring them into modern day technology. With that comes improvement in services and how we service constituents, how we deliver those services faster and more cost effectively. So many of the contracts that have been issued today support those 2 goals. The third goal is create an innovation ecosystem throughout the city so that we can continue to engage the local tech community, the local startup community, by exposing public data. We found that the open data program is really very helpful in making sure that the matchmaking and the engagement really happens between the city and the local startup community. Number 4, we want to take as many transactions as possible that are today available in over-the-counter or in manual-driven processes and convert as many of them to online as possible. And number 5, the last item is create some innovation around how we engage internal employees, how we engage with the outside, and there are several key programs that we could talk about today on what we're doing there, whether it's the Municipal Academy, Innovation Academy, the Municipal Lab, or the Innovation Management Strategy for the city.
Is that it?
Those are 5 broad goals, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So almost every project and initiative and decision that we make back in the office, we need to connect the dots to one of those 5 strategic goals.
Question. How many PCs does the city of Philadelphia own?
How many PCs do we own? I can certainly get those numbers.
You don't have those numbers?
I don't have them exact.
How many laptops does the city of Philadelphia own?
The same chart will also show the laptops.
So you don't know today?
I can give you numbers. They wouldn't be accurate numbers. Is that okay? No, I just need to update them because we're constantly buying PCs and laptops.
How old is the average laptop? Or no, what is the age of the average desktop?
The average PC is 4.4 years and the average laptop is 3.4 years.
4.4 years. And in the private sector, is that an aged piece of equipment in real time with that on private sector levels?
Yeah, clearly government tends to hold on to equipment much longer than the private sector does.
What is our phone system? We have a landline phone system predominantly, right?
We have a Centrex phone system for all the phones that are on your desk.
So how many lines does the city of Philadelphia own or have, or leasing, or whatever the term is from Verizon?
About 26 to 27,000 lines.
We have 27,000 lines. How many of them are inactive? There's lines to nowhere.
Probably in the hundreds. We are currently conducting a study. We've reached out to all the departments so they can help us identify zero usage lines.
What is the base cost of a line once we establish it?
Yeah, there's no standard flat set rate, but we do have a, roughly $7 a month per line is our current contracted number.
Would you be surprised if I said that that number is of unused lines is not in the hundreds, but in the close to thousands? Would you be surprised?
I would be surprised because I've heard those numbers before, but however, we have to understand that not every landline that the city has terminates at a person's desk. Sometimes you have to understand that we have lines for security systems, for elevators, for a whole bunch of other reasons where there's nobody actually actively making a phone call, but that line is needed there nonetheless.
How many cell phones does the city of Philadelphia subscribe for?
So there's roughly 1,883 cell phones and about 2,390 BlackBerries.
How many of those cell phones are missing?
Are missing?
Yes, meaning we don't know who actually has them. And how is that, how many, do you know the answer to that?
We monitor that stuff pretty carefully on the back end.
So how many?
If we see zero utilization, we're going to move to do something about that. Terminate the line, terminate the plan.
So if you say, if you see zero utilization, that does not mean that the utilization is valid. That somebody could have a cell phone, use it, and it not be the person that really needs the cell phone. Does that happen?
I'm assuming if a person has a cell phone, it's because they need to use it.
What is the verification process to make sure that that happens? How many cell phones did you say we have?
It's 1,883 cell devices.
So out of 1,000 cell phones, how do we verify that the right person has the cell phone? And what is the average bill of a cell phone a month?
The average, Ray's my deputy CIO, the average is about $17.99 for the cell phone per month.
All right, Councilman, I have another council member that has keyed up, so you are a little past the time.
All right, I will continue
Okay.
on my next round.
Okay.
Continue that.
Okay.
Councilman Heenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So when you took over in 2011, is that right?
Yes,
You
at the
came
tail
in
end
to
of
take
August
over,
or
but you
Labor
joined-
Day 2011, yes.
Okay, great. One of your first real hurdles was to smooth out some of the challenges associated with the consolidation. What is the status of that? How's that going?
So the model that we've finally agreed on is a federated model where there are clear responsibilities that are and services provided by the central organization. And we still intentionally left some services that are provided at a department level. And although some of those IT staff are on our payroll, we left them physically in the department so that they could provide a more responsive level of service. So a good example would be infrastructure services. So we took the services that cut across all the departments and all the agencies. Makes a lot of sense to consolidate those and put them into a single place and place the accountability and the authority in a single unit. So we took those on, providing network connectivity, providing internet access, providing network services, whether they be data or voice. But the local day-to-day user support or the support for some of the custom-built applications that were built over the years, we left those folks as close as possible to the end users that they are supporting. And today, 2.5 years later, that model seems to be strikes really the best balance between providing best support to an agency at a more cost-effective budget.
Right. So you feel encouraged that we're heading in the right direction for those infrastructure, and they're major infrastructure projects, right? I would imagine.
I'm sorry?
The consolidate, I mean, that's some major infrastructure in technology.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I did not necessarily, I was not part of starting the consolidation. I think everyone that put some thought into that was certainly on the right track. What we did, frankly, is come in and tweak the model to really kind of fit the wide scope of the city. The city is very broad in the set of services that it provides, and we needed to make sure that we can agree on an operating model that really strikes that right balance between central efficiency but also some local support.
No problem. If you could, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of services there in coordination. Could you just, give an update?
An example of, let's say something that...
Well, you can give an example, that's fine, but you could also provide it to the chair, an update on the consolidation overall, just an overview.
Be happy to.
If you would, please.
We can provide it as part of...
I know every department head is eager to make improvements that are, technology in their department. Do you have a list of projects that you are managing and implementing that you can share?
Yes, so there's a small sample of those projects in the strategic plan that we just handed out to the chair and to Councilman Jones, and that's a very small list. We can provide a more comprehensive list from our central intake process.
That's good. And an overview of and we'll, I'll take a look at that,
Sure.
When the chair provides it. So do you provide all the technology and infrastructure upgrade in each department, or does, from a procurement standpoint, does each department has its own autonomy for, technology upgrade?
For the most part, we provide, where we decided to draw the division of labor is OIT is providing what we would call enterprise level services for technology.
Like an asset management system? That would be
like
broad.
access. The best example to think about is that we don't want everyone negotiating access to the internet on their own. So we bulk buy that and negotiate that under a single contract and provide a single or a dual pipe that every agency could make use of. That's a very cost-effective way, and didn't necessarily it started before my time, but that's a practice that continues, obviously. So that's an example where there are some services that would make more sense that we will provide centrally and every agency would consume.
Right, and I think it does. It does make sense. So, and I'm asking every department, and I'll come back if there's anybody else like you? All right,
Yes.
so I'll come back to
Sure.
follow up on that, because I think redundancy and buying in bulk as opposed to, procuring, for each department or agency is just the total waste of how we could be saving, the city in its purchases. So I'll follow up shortly.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Jones.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for your kind indulgence. I won't ask you how many handhelds we actually have out there. No, I will, for the record. How many handheld devices do we have as a municipality?
I don't have an exact number. I would guess it's close to 2,000. And handhelds, I'm assuming you mean tablets or consumer-grade devices.
Yes.
Probably close to 2,000.
See, when we say close to, at several hundred a pop, that worries me. So again, I asked you about those different lines, and I need a precise number provided to the chair before I'm prepared to vote for a budget. I will give you a comparison. So your strategic plan is 20 pages. We went to the public market to raise $120 million for the Office of Innovation and Technology to implement your plan. When the school district, who is asking, ironically, for $120 million, they provided us budget itemized detail that was several phone books thick. 20 pages does not get a blank check in my mind. So, as we start talking, do you do the water department's technology?
I provide some services to the water department, but they are they have staff that provide the majority of the local services within the water department.
So in the past, we spent $50 million on 5 attempts to deliver a new water billing system. Do you know that one?
If it was before August of 2011, I can't address it.
So we've wasted on these kinds of wow factors that aren't really impressive at all. And so before we write another blank check, Mr. Chair, I'm going to need those kinds of details, because we made 4 attempts, spent $50 million. That's half or 1/3 of what the school board needs. If we can find efficiencies within this, we can possibly get some stuff done. Other cities have provided these kinds of technological game plan, strategic plans. I have the city of San Antonio. I have the strategic plan for Los Angeles on what their goals are. I have the strategic plan from all of these departments in different cities that go into a great deal of specifics about what their goals are. And they can, to a person, do, highlight what they have. In the case of, what was the city? They had 68 online ways and licenses that you can get online. How many do we have that you can go online and pay for today?
I certainly provide that before the end of the day. I know that we have a report on that.
We wrote a $120 million blank check. And I'm not going to, real clearly, until I get answers to this, and I won't belabor this any further because I think I've made my point. I'm not going to vote for a budget to a department that has this size of expenditure on 20 pages of data. I'm just not. And I'm going to encourage other people not to until we have a better, clearer vision of what the strategic plan is for the city. Because we're not going to keep kicking this can down the road. How many subcontracts, contracts do you have with outside vendors?
Well, in fiscal year 14, we've processed 55 contracts, and 1 out of every 5 is a subcontractor that's local to the city of Philadelphia.
And I'm going to need a scope of services for what they're providing. And so, Mr. Chairman, I will adhere to the bell, and I won't belabor this anymore, but I will not vote for it, and will encourage any responsible member not to write a $120 million blank check when our schools are in jeopardy where that, I just don't get it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I hear you, Councilman.
Is there an
Sir,
opportunity
you
to,
said about, on the one issue that you could provide it by the end of the day. The issues that Councilman Jones has raised, and are there more? Okay.
Here's the school districts. Here's the school district's $120 million request.
I got you.
Is there an
Of the
opportunity
ones
to,
that have been, ones that have
address
been questioned so far, and maybe the councilman wants to provide the other ones in writing, however he wants to do it. But the ones that provide so far, reasonably, how long would it take to get that information to us?
As far as the services that are available online?
The questions the councilman raised. Yeah.
The services available online, you can have that before the end of the day today.
Okay, all right. And I would urge that whatever other issues the councilman raises, you heard, I think it would behoove you to try to get that as quickly as possible.
I'd just
certainly
like to highlight one thing, though. So Steve Reneker is the CIO for the City of Los Angeles, a great friend of mine. Spent $600,000 on that strategic plan that you have. And in doing it, he pretty much modeled the city of Philadelphia. And you're more than welcome to contact Steve Reneker. Peter Wallace is the CIO for San Antonio. He's no longer there, but he spent over $300,000 on that strategic plan. And then we're in constant contact with Peter Wallace. Not only just Peter, but Steve and all the CIOs from the various jurisdictions. The 20-page strategic plan is a 2013 to 2015 statements of what we are going to accomplish in the future. The spending plan and the strategic plan that was associated with the $120 million capital budget request was submitted, and I cannot take credit for it because it was before my time, and that is available, and that's not 20 pages, but if you believe that's documentation you need, we can certainly provide that as well.
Councilman, you wanted, I know Councilman O'Neill has a question too, but we want to,
Information.
yeah, please,
He
yes.
just said so. I was letting it go.
I know.
In the plan that you reference of your dear friend from Los Angeles, he can tell me how many applications that can be filled out online are. It's in the plan. He can probably, if I had him here, tell me how many lines the city of Philadelphia has with Verizon, how many of them are idle, how much it costs us annually, how we can reduce them. Should we go to a cloud solution? Should we be on the internet as opposed to going through landlines? That's a strategic plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And again, if you could get as much of that information as quickly as possible, we'd appreciate it. Councilman O'Neill?
Mr. Chair, I appreciate what Majority Leader's asking for and support any kind of information request to our CIO and his department. I think the reason I support it is we are blessed with probably the only large jurisdiction in the country that has kicked out the silos a long time, quite a few years ago now, and put all of our IT under one department, no matter where it resides. And we are known, we may not be known as the best demolition city in the country or the best for this or best for that. We're trying to, but we have clearly set ourselves apart in the area of IT. And so getting information is our right and our privilege and our duty, but knowing that it's there and it's going to be good news rather than bad news, we're way ahead of the curve, not just San Antonio and Los Angeles, but I spent a lot of time in this area nationally, cities and counties, and we're very fortunate to have the team we have under Adele. And I just am confident that whatever questions are asked, the answers will be not only forthcoming, but answers that we're happy with.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Heenan, I think you got clicked off. Do you have questions? What, pardon me? Okay. All right, Councilman Jones, then Councilman Heenan.
Windows XP, which is the operating system many of the thousands of city employees go on, is getting ready to go offline. Our computers are so old that they won't be serviced anymore. The Motorola contract that we have is about to expire on their maintenance program. We're getting ready to get hit with major expenditures, major, that I need more detail of. And I don't want to be Los Angeles if we have 200 contracts where everybody's getting paid, but no one in the city of Philadelphia can even get documents sent to them because the operating systems are out of date. So if that's cutting edge, I doubt it.
All right, okay. I understand, Councilman. Councilman,
Yes.
you did, okay, all right. Somehow you got clicked off there, but Councilman Heenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've had the recent conversation about hotspots. And I talked about hotspots were with our Deputy Mayor for Parks and Recs when they came up, and I've had other brief conversations with our Managing Director. So can you explain to us the hotspot program and how it's offering other opportunities in bridging the digital divide or in some of the low-income communities, and what is the next step to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to be digitally connected?
Sure.
So before you say, I'm
sure.
excited about hotspots. I'm excited about it expanding, and I'm excited about it offering opportunities. But I am concerned that I don't know how we get there. So if you could let us know what are some of the challenges that we have with it. But in short, I like the hotspot opportunities that we have in front of us.
I really think you mean Key Spots. So
Key Spots.
Yeah, that's all right. So Key Spots is a program that was initiated as a result of a federal stimulus grant which the city was party to. And that left the city with a little over 70, roughly maybe 78 key spots. And those key spots are a combination of presence in some parks and recs, plus some of the free library locations themselves turned into a hotspots. And then...
now I'm confused. Key spots, hot spots.
Yeah, so Key Spot is the name of the program.
That's why I said,
Key Spot is the name of the program. A hotspot is just access to the internet. And then the balance were being maintained by some local non-profit organizations in partnership with Drexel University.
What's the concept behind them? What are,
So the
what-
concept
what-
behind
what
them
do they
is-
offer? What do they do? Is it bringing us wireless? I'm not going to. This is probably taboo, but wireless Philadelphia. All right. So, but is this a smarter way to bring access and computer abilities?
Yeah, so it provides, it builds capacity in some of the neighborhoods that are underserved, and that capacity comes in multiple ways. It's a place where you can go and have access to a computer that has access, that can give you access to the internet, access to a computer that also has some tools that can help you perhaps put together your resume and look for a job. We also provide some training at many of those sites. I kind of anticipated that you might ask about this, and I put an entire package on Key Spots for you. I'm happy to leave it with the chair and share.
If you could leave it with the chair.
Yeah, and it's
you
got
could
some
certainly-
great quantitative data in there about how many hours we've provided training, how many computers were handed out, and how many users actually visited the Key Spots.
So just to follow up on our conversation, what are our challenges? We need partners. We need the business community to help expand and deliver some of these key spots, throughout the city. I mean, okay, would that be helpful?
Yeah.
If more businesses step forward to help, build out and offer this, type of...
Absolutely. I think at a macro level, when you've got it, when you have a community and you have folks can equally participate in the internet economy, that creates workforce, talent that all of us need, whether government or private sector. So I think it's in the private sector's best interest to really be, stand up and be partners with us. Because solving this issue isn't just an issue of just bridging the digital divide. It's also making sure that we create a talent pool and a workforce that can be matched up to some of the opportunities that are available. So, whether it's Comcast Internet Essentials for low-income families, or whether some other private sector businesses want to step up and actually take this challenge on with us, I mean, we welcome that.
Good. Did you hear? So Comcast, you're welcome to help the Key Spots expand across the city of Philadelphia. Speaking of Comcast, I know the 15-year cycle for the franchise agreement is coming near
August 2015.
August 2015. So, and it's my also understanding that you've started the process of the cable renewal franchise process has started, and in the process you talked about a timeline. Could you give me the timeline? And I also, I think you're seeking some of the community's input on on that renewal process. Do you have any preliminary feedbacks on any of that, or is that still ongoing?
No, so we're in the process right now of doing the community needs assessment. And this is a combination of actually calling individuals, conducting some online surveys, and getting input from some community stakeholders. All that will culminate in a needs assessment report that we would use to establish negotiations for the cable franchise with Comcast for the next, whether it's 10 or 15 years.
And when's that needs assessment? What's the timeline for that?
I would, we're probably going to finish it over the summer.
Over the summer, okay.
Yep. And then begin the negotiations in the fall.
I just have two other questions.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Two other quick questions, and I'll let everybody go. So asset management, I know it's probably in something that you know, in the document you just provided to the chair earlier. Can you talk about the asset management program or asset management system that is it one of your infrastructure programs priorities for 2015?
So I think asset management in the...
Or in the public property sense.
Gotcha. Yes, that is right now it's labeled AMP. So that project, just last week, we've met with the Rebecca Reinhardt, and we've agreed to allocate some capital dollars for the implementation of that project. The team has a really good, solid plan for how to do that, and I think we're going to move on it and make sure that it can be implemented as soon as possible.
So just as the Office of Sustainability, we're talking about the Energy Authority. I think it's...
yeah, my understanding of the system is that...
At this point, I think it's a necessity.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think you will be doing public proproperty in the city a great service.
And
of
city
making sure that
planning,
this is-
MDO, and the public property have all realized that that's something that's needed.
And is that going to be out of your office's budget, out of the...
It will be
OIT's
part of
budget?
the capital, there's a capital portion that would be out of that budget, yes.
And so you're going to start that when? Is there a timeline on the completion? I mean, you're just at the preliminary stage?
I think right now we're in the stage of some planning and writing the implementation RFP.
Well, listen, you have my full support in making sure that whatever we could do to get that system started and implemented and up and running so we can manage our assets in every sense.
Thank you. I'm sure the team appreciates that.
You got it. Thanks. I have no further questions.
Thank you, sir. Was there anybody else? No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for
You're welcome.
for being here. You want a break? Okay. We're going to have public property and OEO up here. Give us 5 minutes, okay? All right. We promise it'll be 5 minutes. Or thereabout. I think you know the issue that with reason for the callback, Council President and others had serious concerns about the participation level at the Dilworth Plaza site. If I have the figures right, I think the goal was 32%. I think it was reached, 22% has been reached. And the Commissioner said at the last meeting that given what the other jobs that are left, the likelihood of getting close to that 32% was not good. Am I saying that right, Commissioner? And obviously the concern was city projects, doesn't look very good that we're that far below the goals. So, however you'd like to respond, please identify yourself and respond, yes.
Well, Angela's going to respond.
Sure, no, that's fine. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Councilman. Thank you for the opportunity to speak regarding the goals that were set on the Dilworth Plaza project. I think one of the things that we need to be more outwardly focused on are the statistics, the demographics of the workforce community as it relates to the trades on this project and other projects. The goals that were set on this project are specifically out of the MESID study that was published in 2009. I think we've had conversations about that. That MESID study required 32% minority and 7% female membership, ultimately, in the unions. This goal was based on the demographics of minorities and young women, but primarily minority males who had graduated from high school, they had earned their GEDs, and some had college, some college education. And so the members of MASID believed that the construction industry was one of the major industries where you could have a livable wage that you could support a family and a community. And so that's the origin of the 32% and 7. It was focused on ultimately union membership goals. So the administration has adopted it as an aspirational goal for those projects that we are engaged on in the public sector. Most of the contractors who respond to bids in the public sector accept our goals and the aspirations for them. One of the other pieces of the goal-setting process are the apprentice programs that we're trying to drive in order to actually achieve a 32% and a 7% availability of the workforce. And so that's where you get the 50% of all apprentices we recommend would be minorities. And 7% of all apprentices across the union trades should be women, with the ultimate goal of us achieving an availability that would support our demand side of the equation. And the demand side is really what's in our economic opportunity plans. The supply side is really driven by members of the trades and the workforce that they develop. We are clear on what our goals are in terms of the 32 and 7, the 50 and 7. We're not so clear on the availability of how many members are in each of the trades, how many minorities are in each of those trades as well. So we continue to drive forward with the goals, and that is how the goals were set for set for the Dilworth project, of which Gilbane is the monitoring agent for this project. What we know now is that over the last few years that we have been tracking workforce on major projects around the city, is that of the projects, let's say 18 that currently have oversight committees, of the 18, we know that 8 of those projects have workforce achievements over 25%. 5%, or 5 of those 18 have achieved over 30% minority engagement. And so one of the things we've looked at is what are the average levels of achievement on major projects, varying types of projects. And we found that about 25% of the workforce is normally minority, and about 2 to 3% are female. So one of our goals on the public sector side is to act as a role model. And we know that when you look at projects that were managed by the Water Department, as an example, the Venice Island project, where we're at 31% minority and about 5% women. These were very challenging projects. They were expensive projects. We were very vigilant, as we were on the Gilbane and Dilworth project side of the house. But what we do know is that the Dilworth project was different. It was a hardscape project.
It was a I'm sorry, what?
Hardscape.
Okay.
It was more of a plaza. It's got Stonemasonry, as an example, we know that there are less than 10 stonemasons in good standing with the unions, as an example. And that's one of the larger demand kinds of skills on this project. We also know that it's heavy on the glazer side. We don't know how many glazers there are in the marketplace, and we don't know how many of those glazers are minorities. So
Wouldn't you be able, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but
Sure.
why, how can I put it, why wouldn't you know? Or have you, I mean, wouldn't they be, that would be something when you set goals or have expectations, that you would kind of know that, how many possibly, I mean, if there aren't, or very few minority, then you're not realistically going to reach certain goals, I guess. So,
Right.
I mean, wouldn't having that information know whether it's a particular entity is either not cooperating or just doesn't have the
Sure.
ability to cooperate, I guess.
Sure. So hindsight's 20/20 vision,
No, I
I would
got
say. One of the things that would help us in setting goals on projects is to know all the trades that are engaged in those projects. We have not historically asked our engineers on the city side of the house, so what trades are going to be on this project? What we do know is contractors, when they are submitting their bids, they have to delineate what are the trades. So we typically don't know until they've submitted their bid, the trades that are going to be engaged, how they're going to be staged on the project. And so that kind of information is more readily available after the bids have come in. When our bids go out into the field for a response, we include economic opportunity plan language with the goals already in it. And so that is why most companies will come back and say, we agree to pursue these goals with good and best faith efforts. There are no guarantees because we don't always know how many other projects that are going to be underway, the demand for the same or similar skills of the trades on other projects at the time that our projects are running. So that's part of the challenge.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I see Councilman Good has asked to be recognized. So, Councilman Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. So the goals set for workforce diversity are not accurate.
They are aspirational goals that we're pursuing.
Are they accurately set?
So they're not set by each specific project. So you could say they're inaccurately set. They're an aspirational goal that we push into the marketplace with the goal of having unions build up their workforce.
Simple question is,
Yes.
is the goal setting for workforce diversity an accurate process right now?
It is not an accurate, deliberate process right now.
So how do you distinguish between business diversity goals and workforce diversity goals when there are multiple projects going on at the same time? And so are the business diversity goals accurate?
So in the business diversity goals, and we have achieved 35.6% or $18 million awarded on this project, and that's on a goal of 36%.
My
So what I want to...
My question is, are the business diversity goals accurate for each project?
They are more accurate. And what I mean by that is this. We have an OEO registry of companies in public works, service supplies and equipment, professional services. And so we have some understanding of the abundance of companies in one particular market versus another. We do not have that same kind of data on the workforce by trade and whether or not there are minorities in particular trades that we could drive our goals towards.
So the Mayor's Commission on Construction Industry Diversity did not provide that?
No, they cannot provide
I
that.
said they did not provide that.
They provided aspirational goals based on some assumptions that they made about graduation rates, individuals.
I'm just trying to get to the point where
Yeah.
the mayor's commission's work was not accurate.
It was incomplete based on the information we have today. So there's still a lot more work, sir, that we need to be doing.
I'm asking one more time, I'm going to follow up with another question.
Okay.
The goals set by the mayor's commission, are they accurate today?
They are not accurate for specific projects.
Were they accurate when they were set?
Based on my understanding, they were based on the best information that the commission had at the time.
The question is, were they accurate then?
I can't answer that.
But you decided to use them,
Yes, we did.
not knowing whether they were accurate or not.
That's correct.
Okay. And whose job is it to convene the commission?
It's my job to convene the commission.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Just so I'm clear, I don't want to belabor the point. So the 32.7 goals are set on all? Is that what you're saying?
They're set on a majority. And virtually all of the public sector jobs. So streets, water, public property, aviation.
But wouldn't it seem, and I know I kind of asked this question, I'll try, do it again. If you don't know the makeup of some of these unions, isn't it very difficult to really say? Because from what I'm hearing was, realistically, you weren't going to come close to 32. Is that a fair statement on Dilworth?
Well, I think when we started out, we didn't know where we would come in. We know that if you don't set the bar high, you won't come close to what you'd be able to accomplish if you set it lower.
Okay.
And so these are aspirational goals that we drive towards and we push for.
Now, I understand, but now, all right, let me answer it another way, because I think this is what really struck the council president
Yes.
when the commissioner was in here, was that, that's a fairly, it looked to us, and I'm sure to him, a fairly big difference, 32 to 22. Is that an unusual difference in a lot of these projects?
Well, when we look at the average of the largest 18 projects that we have oversight committees for, and that represents $1.4 billion in projects around the city, the average is around 25% for minorities.
Okay.
And this project, Dilworth project, is coming in around 22 right now.
And would you say that the argument against lowering those goals, as you say, you want to try to aim as reasonably high as you can, so is that a reason why not to lower them? Is that a fair?
Well, so we're looking right now at what we have accomplished over these past few years. We are working on a document for the Mason Commission to consider, and we'll rely on their advice and counsel in terms of where we take the goals from here.
Last question. While this project was going on, it's obviously been a fairly long project.
Yes.
At different points in time, do you look at these numbers and then say either to Gilbane or to particular unions, we're really we're really not getting close. What can you do? Is there that kind of conversation that goes on?
Absolutely. This project has an Economic Opportunity Oversight Committee. And so we meet on a monthly basis, and we look at the participation goals with regard to the businesses, and we also look at the workforce. And we ask some very challenging questions in less than diplomatic ways at times. I think the commissioner will agree with that. In terms of what can we do to increase the level of inclusion of minority and women-owned businesses. We do know a couple of things. This project was scheduled to take about 26 weeks. It has taken 26 months.
I was going to say 26 weeks, wow, you know?
20,
You really are behind now.
We would have geared up real fast in
Yeah.
20, but it was scheduled to take 26 months. It actually took 35 months.
Right. Mhm.
And as a result, the ramp up was a lot less critical for contractors who were on the project. They were using their core team, which are individuals that they take from one job to the other that actually work for the companies. They were using their core team on the project until they had to ramp up when they then engage more union personnel. And so what we did find is the core team does not have many minorities or women on it. And so that's a key piece we identified. The other piece was just in looking at how the staff, once it does ramp up, which are the trades that are being engaged and the number of minorities that are in those trades who are not employed on other projects.
Okay. All right, I appreciate it. I don't know, again, this was the council president's issue. I was trying to give what the questions I thought he would have, but if there's any others, I'm sure he will be back in touch with you both, okay?
Okay.
All right.
I
Yes.
do know from his testimony, one of the questions he raised was regarding project labor agreements. This project did not have a project labor agreement.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's noted. Thank you both very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your patience in waiting so long. This committee will stand in recess until Wednesday, May 14th, 2014. That's tomorrow, at 10 a.m., at which time we will reconvene in room 400 City Hall, which is here. Thank you.